I was about to go into my freshman year of college, taking over the football career of Forrest Gump, and after getting every single Division I offer in the state of Alabama, I narrowed my decision down to these 3 teams. The biggest of those offers was obviously the University of Alabama. They were telling me I was going to be a 5th string receiver if I came, but the level of development I could get there would be unmatched, and it'd be nice to have Bryce Young thrown to me. The next biggest school on the list was Auburn, and I was surprised because for such a big program, they were telling me that I was going to start right away. If I did decide to go there, that'd probably be the biggest reason, and it was the closest to my home. I mean, we even played the state championship game in their stadium, and the final school on my list was UAB. This was a program that faced a lot of turmoil over the years, but I figured if there was anyone that could change the culture there and make them a perennial winner, it would be me. But ultimately, there was only one school that had enough NIL money for me, and that was the University of Alabama. And at this point in time, I haven't invented Bubba Gump Shrimp Company yet, so I needed that bread. I was in my first practice at Alabama. I would catch my very first ball thrown to me, and they would get me involved with this tunnel screen, which is pretty cool. But a couple of plays later, I blindsided our safety JB, and that started a little bit of a rivalry because the next time I touched the ball, he would blow me up. I struggled so much for the rest of practice from there on that I didn't even make the travel squad for our game against Virginia Tech. So I was right back to practice, and this time I was finding ways to get open creatively, but I also was messing up by calling for the ball when I wasn't open, which resulted in this interception, and the coach's trust plummeted. I needed coach to trust me so he could put me in the game. And after this amazing catch, I thought I was on the right track, but then I just started getting hit and dropping the ball every time I touched it. And on one of the last plays of practice, I would run down the sideline, go up for this catch, but I couldn't secure it. And I knew there was no way that I was going to be playing anytime soon. At least I made the travel squad for our game against Texas A&M. But unfortunately, I was just watching from the sideline in the rain. Thankfully, we made easy work of the Aggies, and I didn't have to sit on the sideline and shiver for much longer. I was back at practice, and after having to watch that last game from the sideline in the freezing cold, I knew that I had to turn up. I ended up having the best practice of the season so far, and I was hopeful that my playmaking was going to get me a chance to get on the field in some capacity against Colorado State. And since we were playing Colorado State at home, there was a good chance that we were going to be up enough to put me in the game. I finally got in and ran this dig route, but I thought the play was over, and Jalen Milroe threw it and it got intercepted. After being the reason we threw an interception last week, I had to do even more this week in practice to get in the good graces of the coaches. I was running all my routes and catching everything that was thrown at me. And when it made sense to improvise, that's what I did. The coaches were impressed and they were finding different ways to get the ball in my hands, including putting me in the backfield and handing it off. I knew that earning playing time at Alabama was going to be a long and hard journey. Wait, what? Difficult journey. A long and difficult journey. And this was honestly expected. I mean, there was a lot of great players that came through Alabama and didn't see playing time until their junior or senior years. I was going to embrace the process and not complain about playing time, and continue to prepare and stay ready for my opportunity when it came. I made the most ridiculous catches of my life in this practice. These were the type of catches that made Alabama interested in me in the first place. And continuing to show Nick Saban that I was a dynamic player that can make any play on the field was important. Earlier in the season, when I would get hit after catching a ball, I would drop it, but now I was securing everything, and I just had a good feel for finding the soft spot in the defense and getting open. So when I realized we were playing Georgia State this week, I figured that we were going to go up by 50 and they were going to put me in the game again. But unfortunately, Georgia State's defense was playing really well, and they were doing a good job of shutting down the run game as well as putting pressure on Bryce Young. So I didn't get a chance to get in the game this week, even though we won fairly comfortably. I went into this practice on the cusp of being able to compete for the 5th string wide receiver role, as crazy as that sounds. And after getting involved in a bunch of different ways and having a good start to practice, I would begin to struggle again, and I wasn't holding on to the ball through contact. And it definitely didn't help that after I got this jet sweep, I'd get tackled for a loss, which would lower my chances of getting into a position battle. We traveled to Kentucky to take on the Wildcats, and we jumped out to a pretty good lead in the first half, going up 17-0, but Kentucky would close it a little bit with the field goal just before the half. They weren't able to stop our high-powered offense, and before you knew it, it was 31-3 going into the fourth quarter. And after this diving touchdown catch in the fourth quarter, we'd go up 38-3, and coach would finally put me back in the game. Even if it was just to block, I was happy to be out there. I went into practice this week understanding that if I just put my head down and grind, there's a good chance that the coaches are going to see that I'm actually a good player, and I might actually get some playing time. But all I could do was put one foot in front of the other and stack these days and continue to get better. And one way or another, I was going to see the field, whether it was on offense or special teams. This would end up being the craziest game of the season. 3-4 Arkansas would travel to Tuscaloosa to take us on. And after going up 10-0 and trying to get some points just before the half, Bryce Young would throw this ball into traffic. It would get intercepted and brought all the way back for a touchdown, and we had a ball game on our hands. That score would hold throughout the entirety of the third quarter, and after going up by 10 on this play, Arkansas would answer quickly, cutting the lead back to 3 with under 3 minutes to go. We'd be forced to punt after going 3 and out, and Arkansas would take full advantage. After getting a stop on 1st and goal, their quarterback would just call his own number, and he'd be able to run it in and take the lead with under a minute left. But Bryce Young and our high-powered offense wouldn't be finished there. After completing this pass to get us to the 30-yard line, we would convert a critical 4th and 1 with under 20 seconds left, and with the game on the line, Coach would surprisingly put me in, but I wouldn't be able to do anything meaningful. Needing a touchdown with 8 seconds left, we had 1, maybe 2 plays at the most, and magically JoJo Earl would come down with the Hail Mary for the game. I went into practice absolutely juiced from that big time win against Arkansas in the last seconds, and I would end up having my best practice of the season, catching this pass and taking it all the way for a touchdown. And it was either Groundhog Day or I was having deja vu, because the same exact thing would happen a couple plays later. I'd be in a position battle my next practice. This game would end up being even closer than the Arkansas game that we won by a Hail Mary. Tennessee would travel to Tuscaloosa and take an early 6-0 lead after they missed their extra point. Bryce Young would answer right back to Jermaine Burton, but the very next possession would mess up on a speed option and the ball would go flying backwards as Tennessee would recover and use that momentum to go and score the go-ahead touchdown. This was a classic defensive SEC battle. There was less than 20 points total between the two teams in the first half, and Bryce Young and the offense were starting to sputter. But just before the half, Tennessee would throw an interception at the goal line instead of extending their lead even further. And this one would have went all the way if he didn't get caught by his shoelaces. We were in the fourth quarter with the same score, and Bryce Young had to pull a rabbit out of his hat again. We would take the lead on that field goal, and fittingly for this game, our defense would force a fumble and we would recover it, and that would be the end of that. We'd get to celebrate that night, and I would go ahead and drive and go see Jenny. I was finally in my first position battle of the season against Holden, and after making a couple of big plays late into practice, I was 1 catch away from being the 5th string receiver. But unfortunately, after a perfect route, I just wouldn't be able to make the catch. And we would have to host a tough-ranked LSU team. We'd go down early in this one, and by the third quarter, we were down 13-0. We'd answer with a field goal to make it 13-3. And with just a few seconds left in the third quarter, we would force an interception and have the ball in great field position. On a huge 4th and 3, Bryce Young would convert. And just a couple of plays later at the goal line, we would pitch it out to Jace McClellan, and he would take it in. All we had to do was play some good defense, but on this 3rd and 5, they would run a draw and convert and end up kicking a field goal. On 4th and 20, it looked like Bryce Young had more magic left in the tank as he would convert it. And on the final play of the game, we'd line up to go for a Hail Mary, but unfortunately, we just didn't have enough time to throw it. We just took our first loss of the season to our rival LSU, and I was in the same position battle against Holden this week. But this time around, I was going to make sure I won this position battle by any means necessary. And with just a few plays left in practice, I would catch it and house it. I was finally the 5th string receiver and earned some respect and was put on special teams. And that was cool and all, except I didn't get a lot of reps at kickoff and I got destroyed on my first time down. The very next kickoff, I didn't get depleted, but I still got pancaked. I was slowly getting some more reps at receiver, and even though I didn't get the ball here, at least I knew that I could get open. And I'd make sure to contribute as a blocker as best as I could. And I had one last chance in the fourth quarter to try and make it tackable with just whiff. I was feeling really good about being on the field as a special teams player and showed off that excitement by taking one of the first plays of practice all the way for a touchdown. My route running was getting better every single week, and at this point, I felt like no one could guard me. Well, at least no zone coverage. I wasn't too sure about man and getting off the press yet, but when it comes to finding openings and following my blocks, I was top of the top. And I had another amazing opportunity this week against an FCS opponent to try and get in the game. I'd come down on this kickoff and just miss the tackle. But in the second quarter, I'd be able to split the blockers, and even though I fell, my teammate would be able to tabletop him over me. I was all around the ball on kickoff, even though I wasn't the one making the play. Coach put me in again and I planted this defender into the ground, and I'd end up making my very first catch as a member of the Tide. No matter how late in the season it was, it still meant a lot to me. I started this practice off with the crispiest post corner you'll ever see. My biggest goal at this point was trying to earn enough respect to try and compete for the 4th string receiver spot. But unfortunately, after that great first play, I would continue to struggle for all the rest of practice. It was looking like I was a far ways away from being the 4th string receiver. until this play happened. I caught this pass over the middle, and I made my friend JB look ridiculous on this touchdown. I mean, I've never seen something like this before. But we were getting ready to take on Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and this game was looking like an instant classic from the beginning. It looked like Auburn was going to stay step for step with us as they answered our touchdown and then hit this field goal to cut the lead to 3. But our offense was simply too good as Bryce Young would throw this beautiful pass in the corner of the end zone. And I was trying to get my licks in on kickoff, but in the second half, I get blown up again. In the fourth quarter, Auburn was starting to make it a game, and with a minute and a half left, they would cut the lead to a touchdown. But ultimately, we'd be able to run the clock out and get the dub. And I know I've said it a bunch of times already, but this actually might be my best practice of the season. I was getting open every other play, and I wasn't dropping the ball when I was getting blown up either. I was out there moving faster than Quagmire does when he finds out a girl just turned 18. And they might have to start calling me Cape Cod because my routes were crispy. I mean, I was getting in and out of my breaks like Justin Jefferson, or more appropriately, Jerry Jeudy, I guess. And on the last play of practice, they called a tunnel screen perfectly into the blitz, and I would take it all the way for a touchdown. Since we were on a bye week, I was able to go into my position battle against JoJo Earl. But unfortunately, I didn't have as much success as I did last time. And this would be another position battle that would come down to the very last play, as Bryce Young wouldn't even look my way. That kind of rhymed, okay? We were in the SEC championship game against Georgia, because who else would it be? And I missed this tackle on the opening kickoff, which would put them in good field position, leading to this field goal attempt, but thankfully they'd miss it left. And Bryce Young would end up taking advantage of the field position himself, as he'd throw an absolute strike on the run to Ja'Cory Brooks for the touchdown. And in the second quarter, we'd extend our lead to 10. They hit their receiver on this screen, but they wouldn't be able to score and would have to settle for a field goal. I realized why I was the 5th string receiver after this Jermaine Burton touchdown, and Georgia just did too little too late as we would end up winning. We had a rematch of the real life Sugar Bowl as we took on Kansas State, but unlike real life, this game was going to be anything but a rout, as Deuce Vaughn's tiny body was able to get them all the way down to the 1-yard line, and he'd be able to punch it in the very next play. They missed the extra point, so this was just a 3-point game, and Bryce Young would take a sack on this play, so we'd have to settle for the tie. And we went into the fourth quarter tied at 6 after missing that long field goal. I finally got in the game in the fourth quarter, but I felt terrible as I ran into our receiver who was going to catch this pass on 3rd and 10, so we'd have to settle for another field goal. Our defense was playing absolutely lights out, and after stuffing Deuce Vaughn on 2nd and 5, on the very next play, we'd be able to get this interception to help try and close this game out. This amazing one-handed catch would seal the Sugar Bowl victory for us. And just because I wasn't getting a lot of playing time as a freshman, I wasn't just going to run away from the challenge. Sophomore year loading.